Hey, beautiful people. Welcome back to another episode of A Nanny's Life. I'm Amber, and this is my life. I have not talked to you guys in a couple weeks. I took last week off in observance of Black History Month, which is observed every February here in the States. And today we're going to talk a little bit more about Black History Month because I think our industry is largely shaped by the contributions of Black and brown people, of course, and particularly here in the States. Domestic work used to be the only option if you looked like me. And so bringing things full circle and getting here to 2025 and still making the choice to be a part of this industry is no small thing. And it's very important to me that we keep the conversation going in this work that we do because it really is a big deal. Sometimes I'm surprised when I post content online at some of the responses that I get because it is still hard for people to accept someone like me choosing nanny life. But I think it's a beautiful thing. And I think the more we talk about it, the more we can understand each other. So that's what I would like to do today. In case you don't know, this podcast is run by a Black woman, amen, who happens to also be a domestic worker. Obviously, that's what we talk about every week. But as it's Black History Month, I feel like it's important to kind of explore the history of caregiving in the States, especially as it pertains to Black folks. I am based in Atlanta, Georgia, which is the South. It's very interesting the themes that have endured over the years. And I think it's very dope the way that nannies have been able to still do this very meaningful, very important work that some have dismissed in the past as unskilled labor, work that anybody could do, work that is beneath many. I think it's dope how we've been able to kind of reclaim that, because caregiving is a legacy for Black people in this country. There was a time when if you wanted to work, you did domestic work. That was the only thing you could get hired to do. If you were Black, especially if you were a woman, you worked in service of others, oftentimes for pennies on the dollar, oftentimes neglecting your own home. And I know we talk about that dynamic as nannies these days, but back then it was so much worse. So, first and foremost, shout out to all the Black nannies who are in this industry today. Black nannies are the blueprint. I will say it till I'm blue in the face. I'm so proud of us for taking back this legacy, for really stepping into what our ancestors were forced to do, but finding ways to make it our own. One of the things that I say about myself is that I am a nurturer by nature, but childcare was my choice. I do believe that some people are simply born with this innate ability to relate to others, to care for others, to help others. And I think some of us also just have that legacy in our DNA. If you look back, not too many generations, y'all, like 2 generations, Black women in our families had to work in domestic roles in order to make ends meet, in order to help support their families, in order to supplement their partner's income. So if you see a Black nanny in 2025, please understand the choice to be in this industry is an act of defiance. It is an act of courage, an act of compassion, an act of consideration. The choice to do what was forced on us, but to find ways to make it our own, to take what we want and leave what we don't, to earn a living wage and to live a good life. I can't imagine how proud our ancestors are of us. So if you've ever felt any guilt or shame or confusion around being in this space professionally at a time such as this, please understand you are so needed. You are so appreciated. You are so valuable. You are so important. What Viola Davis say? You is kind. You is smart. You is important. The work that we do is so major, and everybody is not able. So this week we're going to shout out some Black nannies and domestic workers throughout history. If you don't know much about them, maybe you should go and check it out. Part of the reason I consider being a nanny, a Black nanny in 2025, as an act of defiance is because of the expectation that you must work harder, do better, achieve greater in this country. I think it's very bold, sometimes scary, but very bold to choose to check out of the rat race of the corporate America, of, entrepreneurship, all that stuff. I think personally, I have found a great peace in doing the work I feel I was purposed to do in the capacity in which I prefer to do it, and not having to participate in so many other aspects of society that may not serve me well. I have a lot of friends in corporate America and who are, white collar and all the sort. And the same way that I experience microaggressions in this work that I do, they experience them in the boardroom. They experience them in these offices and in these other environments. And when I look at what my workday looks like, hanging out with a baby, getting fresh air, going for walks, playing music, laughing until it hurts, like that for me is the most beautiful thing. There's so much joy for me in doing this work that I don't think I would get from a different kind of job. So, all that to say, shout out to Black nannies. Black nannies are the blueprint. Living in a world that others you can sometimes be difficult. And I know that nannies in general can relate to feeling othered. A lot of times there's club parents, there's club community members like teachers and coaches and things, and then there's the nannies, right? And you're kind of subdivided, and there's this unspoken understanding that you may be at a different position on the totem pole, right? So if you don't feel like you can relate to or even grasp mentally what the experience is of a Black nanny or even a Black woman in America, I want you to think about those times when you have an issue at your job, right? And you really want to bring it to the parents, to the family, because you know that you deserve better or you're not getting what you need, right? But you're walking on eggshells in trying to ask for what you need, because as much as you deserve that, you don't want to come off as entitled or angry or demanding or inconsiderate. Imagine that being every aspect of your life. It's hard out here, friends. So just, be kind, be considerate, uplift the Black nannies among you, because it's deeper than you realize. I'll say that. So anyway, I just have a few Black nannies throughout history that I want to bring to your attention. And if you have some time, you can maybe go back and do some research and learn a little bit more about them. I had a good old time learning about these folks. So anyway, let's get started. The first domestic worker that I want to highlight is actually anonymous to an extent. She's referred to as a Negro nurse, and she contributed to a piece that was published in The Independent in 1912 called More Slavery in the South. And basically, this woman shared what the general dynamics were for domestic workers in the South at the time. And I find that every time I read it, I'm like, wow, so much has changed, but so much has endured in terms of, ongoing themes, things that we still struggle with, things that, we're still fighting for in our industry to an extent. But I'm going to read a fairly short passage just so you can get a feel for it. And then you can go and find the rest of it if you want to read it yourself. She says, "We poor colored women wage earners in the South are fighting a terrible battle. And because of our weakness, our ignorance, our poverty, and our temptations, we deserve the sympathies of mankind. Perhaps 1 million of us are introduced daily to the privacy of 1 million chambers throughout the South, and hold in our arms 1 million white children, thousands of whom, as infants, are suckled at our breasts. During my lifetime, I myself have served as a wet nurse to more than 12 white children. In the distant future, it may be centuries and centuries hence, a monument of brass or stone will be erected to the old Black mammies of the South. But what we need is present help, present sympathy, better wages, better hours, more protections, and a chance to breathe for once while alive as free women. If none others will help, it would seem that the Southern white women themselves might do so in their own defense, because we are rearing their children. We feed them, we bathe them, we teach them to speak the English language, and in numberless instances we sleep with them. and it is inevitable that the lives of their children will in some measure be pure or impure according as they are affected by contact with their colored nurses. So yeah, I think that's a good one for you guys to check out, just to read an account of what it was like back then. The second nanny that I want to bring to your attention is named Mary Prince. Now, Mary Prince was born in 1946, making her younger than my grandmother. Okay, just for some context here. When Mary Prince was a young lady, she was wrongly accused of murder. She was convinced to plead guilty to murder, and then she was sentenced to a lifetime imprisonment behind this offense. Part of her imprisonment included serving the Carter family when Jimmy Carter was governor. So she worked with their children as a nanny while they were governor, and then she went back to prison. When President Carter was inaugurated, she was allowed to go and attend, and later allowed to serve as their nanny while they were in the White House as well. Much later on, she would be completely pardoned, and she is still here with us today. But I just can't imagine having all those things weighing me down, like being convicted, being wrongfully convicted, being given a life sentence, and still being able to care for someone else's child to the best of my ability. Like, nannies really are built different. So that's Miss Mary Prince. Third is Aibileen Cooper. Now, you may know the name Aibileen from a very popular book that became an even more popular film called The Help. Now, Miss Aibileen was born in the 50s. She spent much of her life as a domestic worker, and one of the families that she worked for were the brother and sister-in-law of Catherine Stockett. Now, Miss Catherine Stockett is the author of The Help. And I didn't know any of this before recently, but the story goes Miss Aibileen was working as a nanny when her boss's sister published The Help. She went and picked up the book, not realizing that she would be a pretty central character. Some of her stories mirroring those of the character Aibileen in the book. And she was upset. She was angry. She was frustrated. She felt like her name, her story were stolen from her without any of her knowledge. And she did file a lawsuit. She did not win that lawsuit, but again, it's one of those instances of the stories being utilized for gain, but the real nannies being left out somehow. I don't know. I find it interesting. If you're not familiar with the movie The Help, it follows several domestic workers working in white households in Jackson, Mississippi. And basically the premise is one of the younger white women ends up befriending some of the maids and writing their stories in a book and giving them the money for it. That is a fictional tale. In fact, Catherine won her lawsuit because she said that her book was completely fiction and any coincidences were just that. But if you're looking for an alternative to The Help and you want to read true accounts of domestic workers in the South, this book came out in the 90s. It's called Living In, Living Out. It's about African American domestic workers in Washington, D.C. around the time of the Great Migration. And this book actually features a ton of oral history from elders who worked in those times and who migrated a little bit north. I'm not done with the book yet. So far, there are just stories from these women who worked as domestic workers in other people's homes, and it's very compelling. It is very enlightening, and I think it's very important if you actually want to hear what it was like being a domestic worker back then here in the States. That's the book you read. So once again, it's called Living In, Living Out, is by Dr. Elizabeth Clark Lewis. I have a Kindle version. They have physical copies on Amazon. They have them in some libraries. That's a really good alternative if you want to read some true accounts of domestic workers. Now, this woman is not technically a domestic worker, but She plays one on TV. Miss Deborah Tillman was America's Super Nanny in the series. So, we had Super Nanny over across the pond. We had Joe Frost and a few more. Well, we had an American version called America's Super Nanny. And Miss Deborah Tillman was featured on the show. She's really, really good at talking to parents and helping them understand their role in keeping the household running. But what I did not know about her is that she was an accountant living her life. Okay. She was an accountant. She had a child and could not find a suitable daycare situation for him. And of course, as one does, she opened her own and she really dove into the early childhood education space, the childcare space, and is even to this day a parent educator and advocate. And I feel like she does a really good job at considering children and teaching parents who may not have the instinct for behavior management and things of that sort. And finally, last but not least, because this is my favorite. If you know me at all, you know I'm obsessed with the movie Karina. I saw the movie as a kid, but I wasn't a nanny when I was a kid. I was just a kid. And I enjoyed the film. We enjoyed Whoopi Goldberg. It's beautiful, a beautiful story. But I didn't learn until I was an adult the origin of the story. So Karina is a film, and the premise of the film is that a father loses his wife. She passes away, and their little girl has a really, really hard time dealing with the loss of her mother. Stops speaking. She's not interested in going to school or socializing or anything like that. And he is also completely consumed by grief and still trying to, work and earn a living and take care of the two of them. So he's not really equipped to help her through it. And so he ends up hiring a nanny to help out so he can go to work. And this nanny ends up really guiding this little girl through her trauma in a very gentle, I think, poetic way. She really takes the route of leaning into the frustration and the anger. And, like we tell kids all the time now, it's okay to feel your feelings. So Karina was a real nanny. And the writer of the film is the child from the story. So she lost her mother when she was, I think, 3. And her father hired a nanny who was much older than the Karina in the film. So the whole romance thing didn't ever happen. That's not a thing. But she was, I think, twice the age of Karina in the film. But she was just as instrumental in guiding this little baby through her trauma and giving her a voice and helping her understand that it's okay to feel your feelings and to go through things, and that you can come out on top. I found it very fascinating in the film that Karina is college educated. She's got dreams of being a writer, but no one will hire her to write. And so despite her knowledge, her education, her ability, she is in the film reduced to domestic work, right? Because it's all she can be hired to do at the time. But like I told y'all, I'm a nurturer by nature. Karina was also a nurturer by nature. So even though it was not her dream job, even though it was not her biggest passion, she really put her all into connecting with this kid and to seeing this kid and understanding this kid. And I think that is the most beautiful depiction of nanny life because it's so much deeper than childcare. It's so much deeper than allowing parents to go to work. There really is so much connection that has to happen. There's so much communication that has to happen, even if you don't have traditional means. Sometimes kids don't know how to express themselves. You got to pay attention for the little things, right? And at the same time, you have to demonstrate an element of humanity so that they understand that, like, we're in this together, kid. Life's hard for you. Life's hard for me. Like, let's talk about it. Let's work it out. For me, I feel like being a nanny really is walking beside children, meeting them where they are, doing our best to connect with and communicate with them, and then teaching them how to connect with and communicate with other humans. That's the job. That's the beauty. I love it. It is incredible. So yeah, just if you didn't know about these women, now you know. I definitely think that the book Living In, Living Out should be on everyone's required reading list. I think that if you don't know how to finish the line, lift every voice and sing, maybe that should be your homework for this week, okay? And no matter what you do, don't forget to appreciate the Black nannies who are still dedicated to this work all these years later. I am so proud of us for stepping into our legacy. I am so proud of us for honoring our ancestors and their contributions. I always say, like, if your dad was a doctor and your granddad was a doctor and your great granddad was a doctor, right? But they didn't have a choice for whatever reason. They didn't choose to be doctors, but that's what they ended up doing. That's what they ended up learning for their entire lives. That's a beautiful legacy for you to go on and be a doctor if that's what you choose. You shouldn't be discouraged from being a doctor just because they did it and you feel like you got to do something better or cooler, right? It's the same thing with caregiving. Some of us just have it in us, it's built in. We've seen our moms do it, our grandparents do it, our aunts, our uncles, whomever. Shout out to Black nannies. I hope you guys have a really, really good rest of Black History Month. If you are a nanny with children who are old enough, read Black authors, talk about Black inventors, and you don't have to highlight the fact that they're Black, right? You can just show a picture. If the children ask, then, you can get into that, but it never hurts to be inclusive. And I really hope that we as an industry can begin to consider the weight of this work on some of us when we are highlighting specific individuals, when we're forming our agencies, when we're deciding who to go live with, when we're deciding who to feature, when we're deciding who should speak, who should be represented. I hope we can do better. All right. Thank you for tuning into another episode of A Nanny's Life. I hope you have an incredible week. I hope you take great care of yourself, as well as, if not better than, all the other people you take care of in your life. And shout out to Black nannies for being the blueprint. All right, I'll see y'all next time.
So let me share the truth on this platform that I got. Black nannies are the blueprint. Forget what else you thought.